Over the years, countless trends or fads have come and gone. Most were trends people followed simply because others were doing the same thing. There's no real origin to most trends. They kinda just happen and then they just fade away or die for whatever reason. The first one we're going to talk about wasn't so much a fad, as it was a way for people to appear edgy and mysterious. Back in 2017, Steam didn't have a clear previous aliases option. To hide your past names, people would spam invisible characters. Since some people change their name way too much on Steam, and they treat their Steam name like their Twitter status, they would have to constantly clear their names up in order to hide their more cringy spur-of-the-moment names. People found out they could make a Steam support ticket and ask them to clear up their past names. So instead of having a bunch of invisible characters as your past names, you'd have a "this user has known aliases." Once this method was leaked, a lot of people ended up doing it, so Steam support got tired and fed up and simply made it an option in 2018. The next trend was the obsession with low-digit Steam accounts. Everyone wanted an OG aged account. Low-digit accounts were everything. It wasn't enough to own a 13-year-old Steam account, which would be the equivalent to a 21-year-old account today. What really mattered was how early was the account created. Was it in the first 1,000 or 2,000 Steam accounts created? Back then, it actually wasn't hard to find and buy these types of accounts, and they weren't expensive either. In fact, most OG stuff like groups or vanity URLs were very cheap. The reason most people bought and used old Steam accounts is because it gave the illusion that they're more OG than they actually were. People love faking and pretending to be old gens. It's still done to this day, on basically every platform. There's people who buy old Discord or Twitter or even Telegram accounts, which doesn't even show the join date to others. Everyone wants to pretend they're more of an old gen than they really are. Back to Steam accounts though, the reason this particular fad died is because people realized how unsafe their accounts actually were, and how easily these accounts would get community banned. A lot of people lost their main accounts forever. People used to report them by making Steam support tickets, but it became even easier when Steam added a way so you could report accounts on their profile. The next fad is literally a fad by the very definition of the word, and that's when people flex their own website. The website usually consisted of a random YouTube video playing in the background, along with some text and links that link to their Steam profile or Steam groups. A lot of groups even had websites which were supposed to represent their online gang of teenagers. Most of these websites usually ended with team or club, and almost all of them lasted less than a few months. Everyone owned a domain with their aliases, and they all thought it was the coolest thing ever. Everyone wanted their own edgy domain so they could link on their Steam bio. Since no one actually knew how to code a website, they all just pasted from other websites and just changed a few links and words. They all also had the text at the top, which moved like a cheat tag in CSGO. This also leads to the next fad, custom image hosts. So most people are aware of ShareX, which uploads images you screenshot to Imgur. Simple enough, right? Well, sadly, no. Since people realized that instead of using Imgur links, like every other sane person, they could instead upload images through the domain they own. So now you had a lot of people uploading their images with links that included words like kill, dark, evil, devil, blood, cheat, hack, and so on. The worst part was when people set up their website to when anyone viewed or clicked on their image link, they'd grab their IP. The second worst part was that realization when you realize that none of the images they linked will work in a few months when their domain is no longer up. Unfortunately, even to this day, people still do this. So I recommend to everyone that if you know someone who uploads images with anything but Imgur, just block them. Even if they're your lifelong friend, block them anyway. Anyone doing this in almost 2025 needs to be segregated from society. The next trend is arguably still around, but to a lesser extent. People used to really care about their displayed Steam badges. This includes the badge you display under your level and the 4 badges that are your most recent ones. The most popular badges to display were the Unalive or Depression badges. which in itself is another trend that has somewhat died. For some reason, everyone thought LARPing that you're depressed was epic and awesome. But this is probably more related to the XXX Lil Peep Sad Boys crowd. Back to badges, some people actually spent hundreds on some badges. It's not because those badges looked amazing or anything, it was just to have rare badges displayed that most people couldn't afford or copy. The next trend we'll be talking about is avatars. People in the cheating, B-Hop, or OG community all use the same kinds of avatars. Aesthetic pictures or Asian girl pictures are of course the main culprits, but even other avatars like cars, money, drugs, anime, or rapper avatars were very common. One popular site where a lot of people used to get their profile pictures from was We Heard It. A popular page was eDoll, which is where most people got their avatars from. If you went on eDoll's page, you'd basically see every avatar from every HvH server or edgy Steam group. People are still unoriginal to this day, but at least it's not as bad as it used to be. The final trend is probably the lamest one on this list, and that's when everyone used crowns in their names, and when everyone copied the same pasta in fancy text. People using crowns in their names started off as being ironic, but then it became unironic. As for the fancy text pastas, well, they were actually funny at first. They were obviously ironic and making fun of how cringe third worlders act. But like most things, it got overused to the point where it became the very thing it used to make fun of. This meme started mostly in 2021, and almost 4 years later, you still see people doing it. Most people are deeply unfunny, so it's not a surprise that memes are always run into the ground. At least it's not as bad as those random chat combos or inside jokes that people post on their friends' profiles. Those are never funny and never interesting, but they always act like it's the most hilarious thing ever. You had to be there, trust me!